Because usually you see these kind of cliche student body president platforms that say, oh, we're going to do all of this and we're going to reform student government, completely change the entire student body. But realistically, the tenure of the student body president is only so short. So you really...
just a quick icebreaker. What's your Starbucks order?
I'm like pretty bland, but I get just a grande iced coffee. But I really like in the summers those like strawberry lemonade kind of drinks that are like really fruity because it makes me think about like, I don't know, it just makes me think of like the beach, and it's like kind of cliche. I'm also from North Texas, and so it's literally the opposite of the beach town that I want to be in. So like if I could put myself in this imaginary perspective, that's like what I like to do.
So part of the goal of doing this whole thing was to make the SBP election process more transparent and provide a little more information to folks about the process. So what's one thing that you wish people knew about the election process that they don't?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it's kind of hard to think about that, just how we've been going about this process. But even if you look at the platform that we've established, we really want to go about the ideals of transparency to the entire student body. And I feel that if we're reaching out to different organizations, those are typically that are disengaged with the entire student government process, then we can actually begin to develop these kind of relationships, and people are going to be incentivized in taking part of student government elections. At the end of the day, student government is a direct source of student advocacy on campus, and I think it's important that everyone knows what kind of elections are going on, and then what the ideals and what the duties of the student body president are. One thing that I want to do is the student body president gives speeches at orientation every year, and instead of just giving kind of orientation speeches and then kind of leaving, I want to be able to dip into these breakout sessions, develop relationships with these new and prospective students, and be able to set a foundation for what the year is going to look like, so they're going to be incentivized to take part in this. Another thing that's like, it's kind of personal, but I don't think people realize how isolating the experience is. So for these candidates, it's pretty tough on our mental health, or at least for myself. And I've been struggling these past few weeks, and it's been really tough. But I know why I want to do this, and I know what I'm doing it for, so that makes it all worth it, at least being in the campaign itself, and who I'm trying to reach out to, and the things I'm trying to set forward for the student body, and what to make better. And despite the fact that it's isolating me from what I'm usually doing and the kind of friendships that I'm used to having, I think it's absolutely worth it so far. But I think it's really important for people to be able to realize that as well.
So the role of student body president realistically is like somewhat limited.
Yeah.
What do you think that realistically you would be able to accomplish? Kind of like how like the president like sets forth like the goals for the first 100 days. Like what do you think that would look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting because usually you see these kind of cliche student body president platforms that say, oh, we're going to do all of this and we're going to reform student government, completely change the entire student body. But realistically, the tenure of the student body president is only so short. So you really hit the ground running. You have to be able to realize what realistically you can get done, what kind of foundation you can set, and what legacy you're going to leave behind. I'm only here for a year, and then like I'm booking it out of here. So what I'm going to have to do, there are a lot of issues. One of those is being able to develop legitimate and genuine relationships with different people from throughout the student body, and that's undergraduate and graduate alike. It's important to realize that we need to dive into deeper connections with marginalized communities and typically disenfranchised communities that especially the administration is ignoring. I think it's really important because throughout even this campaign process, when I've been reaching out to different organizations and different individuals, they think, you know, why am I incentivized to be a part of student government when we don't even have an established relationship? So my time throughout the presidency, I want to be able to establish those relationships and leave a lasting legacy so that we can all collaborate together and foster an environment that's going to incentivize people in being part of student government. Another part of my candidacy that I think is legitimate and feasible is that, you know, the next student body president is going to be in office during the 2020 elections. So regardless of your partisan identity, it's going to be really important to mobilize these student voters. So if you look into my platform, you can see things such as voter education 101 sessions. So telling people if they're out of state or in state where they can vote, how they can vote, and how they can use their civic duties responsibly. Another is commit to vote cards, so people are going to be actually incentivized in taking forth or like engaging in their civic responsibilities on and around campus. Another is my specific platform idea that I'm really excited about, but it's called the Mayor's Advisory Council. So it's developing a better relationship with the external community. So regardless of the national election, you have to take part in municipal elections, state elections, just regular government elections that you want to think of engaging beforehand. And I think this is an unprecedented year, especially since now we have a student voice in the city council. So being able to engage in those kind of conversations and taking part in members from the external community as well as those from the Carolina community is the way we're going to be able to move forward. Sorry, I'm talking a lot for this in one answer. But two other things I want to be able to do specifically are continue the legacies from previous student body presidents engaging in sexual assault awareness and advocacy and mental health advocacy and awareness on campus. Those are never going away, and every year we have new students, and every year we need to make sure that that's a constant awareness tactic, and that's a constant issue that's facing every single student. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And you mentioned just now sexual assault, and it's something that we as an editorial board and as the Daily Trial cover more than we'd like to. And it's an issue that we like to hold the university and other entities accountable for. So I guess with that said, what is your plan for creating a campus culture that doesn't tolerate sexual assault and for holding people accountable?
Right. And personally, this is an issue that's really that I'm passionate about, and that I've worked for and advocated for throughout my entire time here at Carolina, even outside of student government. If you saw the AAU survey results from 2019, those are extremely alarming and sobering. However, I think it gave us pretty good details about where these domestic violence and gender-based violence issues are taking place and how we can engage them head on. So one of my ideas for the student body presidency is in engaging in the Red Zone initiative and continuing that foundation. But instead of using that as the first 4 months of each academic year, I want to be able to make that continuous and be able to use that as a collaborative effort between different student organizations, especially marginalized ones that usually feel like they're being left behind on campus, and even beyond that. You know, I know previous administrations have collaborated with organizations such as the Carolina Indian Circle and the Bridge with Duke, but I think it's important to be able to engage and continue educating students throughout the entire year rather than just a couple of months and then they forget about it. Because this issue is all facing, and it's going to be important to be able to take that head on every single day and every single second of the day. Another idea that I have is continuing, well, it's not an idea that I have, but it's continuing the ideas of former student body presidents. So Savannah Putnam came up with this idea when she was running for student body president a couple years back, which is the Angel Shot Initiative. I think that's incredible, and once again, alluding back to my previous mention, is that, you know, we can't just completely reform student government. We have to go off a foundation set by previous student body presidents. And this idea, I think, is especially important. So for those of you who don't know, the Angel Shot Initiative is an initiative set in Chapel Hill bars that if someone feels uncomfortable or feels like they may be in danger, that they can request an angel shot from a bartender and be able to get to safety. I want to be able to expand upon that in Chapel Hill to different bars, but I want to use my position as the liaison to UNC Chapel Hill at the Association of Student Governments to be able to expand this initiative to different UNC system schools, which are 17 of us, so that every single student across the UNC system feels safe and secure at their respective university. Another idea that I have, oh my god, I had so many of those. Okay, another idea that I have is collaborating with the Delta Advocates. So if y'all don't know what that is, so it's an organization through Pan-Hellenic sororities. So different individuals from Pan-Hell sororities congregate and are advocating and raising awareness for sexual assault awareness, especially in Greek life, which you can see through the AAU survey results are pretty prevalent and way too prevalent, especially that y'all mentioned too, through the administrative level that they're not recognizing, which they need to do. Another part of my administrative plan is being able to implement a similar organization, but through IFC fraternities too. So it's in the process, but I want to be able to collaborate and make that actually implemented and codified, and it would be called the Champions of Change. So being able to recognize that IFC fraternities are a huge part of the problem, given that it's a pretty problematic area on campus, especially regarding sexual assault, and taking accountability from within those areas on campus, and being able to work collaboratively with student government so that every single part of the student body is made known and making awareness known. Another initiative that I want to be able to make known, I want to make sure that I'm actually getting every part. I want to increase more funding for the Women's Center on campus. So that's going to be advocating at the administrative level, and they're severely understaffed. So if we want to be adequately able to serve these students that are being discriminated against and these students that are being marginalized and students that are being attacked, I think it's important that we actually put adequate resources in these kind of programs so that students feel actually safe and secure on campus.
Oh, this campus is particularly inaccessible for people with different levels of physical ability, especially in regards to getting into certain buildings and getting around on campus. Does your administration have a plan for addressing this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes up a lot to the administrative level because they're not taking the adequate actions that they need to be protecting students. So I actually have a few specific plans for this. And one of them is developing a subcommittee under the current committee, Student Safety and Wellness through Student Government, to be able to develop a comprehensive plan that outlines, the academic buildings that are not up to code, the different places on campus that students are having difficult accessing, and what we need to do about that, and taking that to the university, to these discussions behind closed doors and saying, this is what we need to do, what are you going to be able to do about it, and how are you going to be able to improve the lives of students on campus? Because right now you're seeing that they are not advocating for students, and that's extremely problematic. You can even see that the Board of Trustees, for example, the old well, only needs a pillar moved just a couple of inches to be ADA approved for wheelchair accessibility. However, they're completely ignoring that. So continuing this advocacy and say, you need to improve this for students, and this is what needs to change is going to be really important. Another thing is that sidewalks in general across campus are typically uneven and slippery, and students have a difficult time actually accessing them and getting to where they need to go on campus. And that may be in the long run, but taking accountability for that in the first place and saying, we need more funding for this. This needs to be done immediately because students aren't even feeling comfortable on their own homes in Carolina, because even going to class is a struggle for them. Is really important for me too. If you see too on the campus accessibility maps, there aren't highlighted paveways for people to get between academic buildings, and not even for students, but for prospective students and prospective families. It's really important that they know how to get across campus and when they're touring, and how they can actually adequately see the entire campus community and what's in store for them is really important too. So being able to highlight that, I think, is really important. And this next part isn't necessarily physical accessibility, but also digital accessibility. UNC Carolina has one of the biggest digital accessibility teams in the entire country for colleges, and I think we need to take advantage of that so students can actually be able to navigate the resources that are available for them online and the resources that they can see whenever they go online. That may be difficult for them, especially for a lot of different students. However, but if we actually take advantage and highlight the opportunities that are available for them in the team that we do have, I think there are a lot of initiatives that we can be doing, especially through my administration.
In regards to mental health, which you mentioned earlier, what do you think is currently working really well? What do you think needs to be improved? And what new initiatives does your administration plan to implement?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this might be a loaded answer, so brace yourselves. So first of all, I just kind of want to outline, there are a lot of resources available for students on campus, but this kind of goes back to the transparency answer, in that students don't know what's available for them, and even if they do, there's a stigma associated with mental health on campus, and they don't feel like they're adequately able to access these resources. So what I want to be able to do is improve on the resources available and the transparency to CAPS in areas like ARS, and areas like the psychology clinic on campus. So students are like, okay, I can actually access this. I'm having a tough time. I want to be able to take advantage of the resources that are available to me, and I want to be able to make myself better on Carolina's campus. And like myself personally, I've had issues with mental health throughout my time, and I've even felt uncomfortable approaching these kind of resources. I want to make sure that throughout my time as student body president, that doesn't happen to other students. One really cool idea that just started through student government, actually through Ashton's administration, is that the peer support, or the peer-based support network. I think that's honestly really inspiring, just because if students don't feel comfortable engaging in these one-on-one sessions with actual administrators or professionals, they can engage in conversations with their fellow peers who are also struggling at their time in Carolina. And fostering this kind of dialogue and communication is a really good way and really beneficial way to move forward in the Carolina community. Another initiative, one that I actually started myself. So I've been an undergraduate senator since my first year at UNC, and mental health is one of my most passionate issue areas on campus. So I codified and passed through unanimously the Mental Health Awareness Week bill, and then worked with the Mental Health Task Force, which is now the Mental Health Committee, to be able to establish that as an annual initiative. So that started last year, and I wanted to be able to continue not only through my presidency, but years down the road after I leave. And what I want to be able to see it improve on in the future is that I want it to be focused on more marginalized communities and more communities that is more stigmatized for them, and communities that individuals don't feel like they're actually comfortable in engaging in these kind of conversations or seeking these kind of resources. I think that could be really beneficial, and especially kind of spreading that awareness and having this transparent dialogue is ways we can actually come together and engage in these conversations and actually seeking the resources that we need as all students. Another initiative is that I think it should be free, or we need to continue on the ideas and the implementations of free Lyft rides and free transportation for students for off-campus mental health resource appointments. I can't emphasize enough. I mean, there's already financial barriers for a lot of students on campus, nonetheless for mental health accessibility. So if we're going to be able to have them actually reach out and try to engage in these kind of conversations about their own mental health, we need to make it accessible and feasible for them. And so engaging in this kind of initiative is going to be really important moving forward, that I want to be able to establish going forward with my administration.
Stop you right there.
So the current makeup of student government is very white, wealthy, and not particularly welcoming for marginalized students. How do you plan to make student government more accessible and inviting for students whose perspectives could diversify what is currently a pretty homogenous institution?
And I think that's a really good question, because student government is really homogenous. You can see that just being a member of it. Once again, what I want to be able to do is establish relationships with minority and marginalized communities and continue building off of those relationships that I've already made throughout this entire campaign. You know, every single organization, and I'm not exaggerating, but every single organization member and leader that I've talked to say, you know, we'd like to be a part of student government, but we don't feel like we're not establishing relationships with student government, so why would we be incentivized on taking part in these kind of initiatives? Because we feel like we're not being cared enough, and our voices aren't actually being heard. We're just, you know, ultimately being tokenized, which I think is problematic in itself. And so being able to establish genuine and continuous relationships, going out of our way to be able to go to these meetings and taking a step back when we need to be able to hear what they want to have to say and what concerns they have for the student body is how we're going to be able to establish these genuine and transparent relationships. One thing I want to be able to do with my administration is require every single member to be Safe Zone trained, One Act trained, and implicit bias trained. I think that's going to be really important, so we can all educate ourselves to take part in these difficult conversations and use student government as an outlet to empower students and uplift voices, not only throughout the university level, but to the administration and to the Board of Governors level. Another idea I have is that I'm going to make sure to recruit from different organizations on campus that aren't usually represented through student government. I think that's really important too, just because if we're going to be advocating for different students on campus, then how are we going to effectively do that if we don't have representation from these different communities? And so we're going to have to make sure that we are going out of our way to encourage these students to be joining student government, to make sure that their voices are going to be heard, and to make sure that they know that this is a place for students to actually be able to engage in these kind of conversations and take part in these initiatives that they care about the most. They need to make sure that they're not being left behind and they're not having this conversation taking over them. They want to be the ones that are taking over this conversation. And as a white male, my breadth of knowledge only goes so far. So I need to be taking a step back as student body president and letting them engage in these conversations, and using my platform as student body president to uplift the voices of traditionally marginalized and disenfranchised communities on campus.
There have been some pretty questionable diversity and inclusion initiatives implemented by the university that make it clear that their grasp on what that means is kind of unclear. What does diversity and inclusion mean within your administration, and what is it going to look like for you kind of in an outward facing way?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of building off of my last answer, but also I have a few specific initiatives that I think would be really beneficial, not only for student government, but for the whole student body and for the administration to realize, wow, we're doing a lot of things wrong. So, sorry, my leg's falling asleep. So one idea that I have is the Racial Equity Institute. And so this is an organization out of Greensboro, and it's a 2-year program. And actually, I just met with the 2 candidates for campus-wide president, Veda and Talini, about how we're going to be able to collaborate on this. They're awesome. They're the sweetest. But how we're going to be able to collaborate rather than just being a student government-led initiative. So we want to be able to engage in these or engage in these conversations, dismantle the barriers that engage in discrimination. This institutionalized discrimination that's being promoted by the university and by the administration is extremely problematic, and I think this is really going to be able to help when we bring these student organizations together, when we empower all of our voices together to work to dismantle the problems at hand. Another idea that I have is something called this. Another idea that I have is something called the Racial Justice Alliance, and so this is under my civic engagement area on my platform, and that's about bringing together conversations and bringing together individuals, both undergraduates and graduates and members of the external community, to engage in these tough conversations, to have this difficult dialogue, to realize, wow, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and the state of North Carolina has a severe history of suppression, has a severe history of gerrymandering and just toxic and disenfranchisement of specific marginalized communities. And I think that if we encourage this and if we engage in these conversations, it's going to have kind of a domino effect to the rest of the state and realize, wow, the University of North Carolina is really taking a head-on engagement into these tough issues, and especially going into a voting year. This is really important to realize that, wow, we're actually uplifting the voices of people who are traditionally marginalized and people who are disenfranchised. And we're not going to let anybody be left behind, and we're going to uplift these voices, and we're going to empower people.
So, what are your thoughts on the recent Silent Sam settlement, and what will be your administration's role in the future of Silent Sam, or do you think the issue is resolved?
First of all, I absolutely condemn the decision by the Board of Governors. They're actively taking a role against the well-being of students. And by doing that, by endorsing an openly racist organization, by providing them with $2.5 million that they could be using and investing in students and in the well-being of students and in the financial resources needed by students, they're completely disregarding the well-being of us. I think that, first of all, we need to engage in a conversation with the Board of Governors, but it's kind of difficult because the Association of Student Government's president doesn't have a voting seat or a voting voice on the Board of Governors. I think that we need to come together of all the UNC system schools, all of the 17 UNC system schools, and work to advocate for a voting seat on the Board of Trustees for the president of the Association of Student Governments. And I think that we can feasibly do that if we all work together. As the liaison to UNC, I've seen the really passionate different students, whether that be students from HBCUs across the state or minority serving institutions. I think if we all form a coalition together and actually actively work to be able to dismantle this kind of systemic racism that's throughout the system, I think we can work together to be able to help just create a better system for us, especially after this toxicity that's been completely endorsed by the Board of Governors. Another idea I have is taking advantage of the State and External Affairs Task Force through student government. I think it's underutilized, and I think that if we endorse lobbying at the General Assembly level, then we're going to be able to help dismantle this system, because ultimately the Board of Governors are appointed by the General Assembly. And I think it's really important to notify that, and if they know that students are kind of fed up with their behavior, and if we're not going to tolerate any longer, then maybe they'll be able to kind of take a step back and say, we are the problem, and we are not going to be able to fix this unless we change what we're doing at the very top and working that from the top down.
With the uncertain future of DACA in mind, how will your administration support undocumented students on this campus?
Right, absolutely. So first of all, I'm going to make sure that every member of my administration is also Carolina trained, on top of being implicit bias trained. And once again, that's so that we can actually educate ourselves and engage in these conversations and help uplift the voices of those students who feel like they're traditionally being marginalized and that they don't feel like they have a support system through Carolina or through student government. Another idea I have is hiring more academic advisors that are bilingual so that students don't feel like they're being isolated from their own academic resources, so they don't feel like they're being torn away from what they should be pursuing in their own academic interest. Furthermore, I think it's really important to make sure that there are different language options on the UNC websites so prospective students and prospective students' families are able to realize what's in store for them, what opportunities they have, and how they could take full advantage of their Carolina experience.
So some of the questionable things that have happened on campus recently have to do with activists' interactions with UNC Police. What do you see as the role of UNC Police in regards to student organizing as well as just in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the UNC Campus Police is historically predatory against students and student activists, and I think that's extremely problematic, especially when students are engaging in peaceful protests. The only way we get things done and the way we see change happen is from student activists. And if UNC Campus Police are actively taking a stance against students, that shows that they are not supporting us. They're trying to dismantle the very system that we're coming about and the very concerns that we have against the administration and beyond that. I also think it's important to show that the UNC Campus Safety Coalition or Commission is beginning to realize that the UNC Campus Police has historically perpetuated a system of violence and discrimination against student activists. And I think that once they realize that, we can have tougher conversations that address campus, and we need to educate these campus police and say, students just want to see change. They want to know that their voices are heard. But how are we going to do that if we can't even engage in peaceful protest against what we stand against?
But so we're reading of your platform, and we're wondering, what do you envision when you say bridging the divide?
Yeah, that's posted a lot. I don't know if y'all have seen it on like social media too, but I was like, bridge the divide on everyone's like Instagram stories. But I think it's an all-encompassing slogan, which is why I chose it. You know, it's not a black and white kind of slogan. It's not referencing just one sort of thing. I think there are a lot of areas that fall under this kind of umbrella of a slogan, and one of those is being, you know, bringing together or bridging the divide between different marginalized communities on campus. Regardless of your background, regardless of your socioeconomic status, you should be able to have your voice heard, you should be able to have your resources available to you when needed, and you should be able to feel empowered across the student body. And student government is a way to be able to access that, as it's a direct source of student advocacy on campus. And I want to be able to use this slogan, I want to be able to use my administration to set a foundation for these students so that they know, wow, these people are here for us, and this administration is actually going to be able to provide a foundation for us, and we actually have something to believe in. Because this is a transparent communication process, and we have developmental relationships with one another, and we're collaborating rather than just using student government as another student organization on campus. You know, Bridge the Divide also encompasses areas such as like undergraduate and graduate bodies, because graduate students are misrepresented throughout different committees, not only through student government, but across the entire student body. Overall, the graduate student population represents 40% of all students, and people don't realize that, and it's growing even further. In a couple of years, it's going to match that of the undergraduate population. So we need to realize that they have specific worries, they have specific instances that they want to be heard too, and we need to be able to help uplift their voices as well. And sorry, one more point is that I think Bridge the Divide also encompasses that of the external community and the Carolina community too. That goes along my lines of a mayor's advisory council, or having people from the State and External Affairs Task Force attending city council meetings and engaging in conversation with the external community, and engaging in conversation and taking voter engagement to the next level with municipality elections and with state level elections too.
So what brought you to UNC all the way from Texas?
Alright, so I have a story behind this, and so y'all are going to have to stay with me because it's kind of weird, but I thought about this question, I was like, I have to tell this story. So, I originally thought I was going to go to the Naval Academy because I've always wanted to go into the Navy and serve. So, there's a two kind of independent application process for the Naval Academy. One of them is like a regular application process, and another one is like a medical application process. So I was actually accepted through the regular application process, and I was pending on the medical status, so that's just to make sure you don't have any underlying health conditions or anything like that. And I'm a big fan of spicy foods. I promise this is going somewhere. So I'm a big fan of spicy foods, and one day I was watching an advertisement, and this was after I got into the Naval Academy, that said, it was like advertising a Hardee's Diablo burger, which is like jalapenos and different kinds of hot sauces and stuff like that. I was like, oh, well, I need to try this. This looks delicious. And so I went and I got it, and it was delicious. But that night I felt worse than I ever had before, and I was like, I cannot bear this anymore. I need to go to the hospital. And so I went to the hospital there, and they were like, I mean, we don't know what's wrong with you right now. We're gonna have to give you a colonoscopy to see if there's anything wrong. And because I got that colonoscopy, the Naval Academy was like, never mind, you can't come here anymore. You might have some underlying health conditions. So the fact that I had a Hardee's burger is the reason that I'm at Carolina. But I was kind of disheartened after that experience, that because I wasn't attending the Naval Academy, but I still wanted to get out of Texas. at least for college. And so I toured the East Coast, and I've always been a huge fan of Tar Heel basketball. And I've always heard great things about the Carolina community and the fact that it's a good social school, it's a good academic school, it's got a great extracurricular and athletic program. And, the second that I stepped foot on this campus, I absolutely adored it. I just fell in love with it. And the day I moved in was only the third time I'd ever visited Carolina, but I knew, this was my home, and this is where I want to be, and this is where I want to spend my academic career experience for college. It all worked out well.
What motivated you to run for student body president?
So as an out-of-state student, I knew absolutely zero people here coming into college. And that was a really scary experience for me, especially coming from such a monotonous and small experience in Texas. I grew up on a horse farm. I mean, people even rode their horses to school, so I wasn't really sure what to embrace when I came. I know that's a cliche for Texas, but people actually did it. And so when I came here, I didn't know how I was going to find myself, how I was going to find my own community. But, UNC really welcomed me with open arms, and I was really able to find myself and broaden my horizons in ways I never thought possible. And throughout my last year at Carolina, I want to be able to give back to the community. I want to be able to provide that home that I found to all kinds of students, regardless of their background, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of their values. And I want to be able to provide an inclusive Carolina, and I want to be able to show that, my lasting legacy is going to be better than that of what I found it. Carolina is going to be better than that of what I found it when I came in here, because of everyone working together to be able to provide a sense of unity across campus. And through student government, we can do that as a direct source of student advocacy and provide a better sense of transparency to every single student, undergraduate and graduate, across any organization, across whatever you're involved in. And that's what I want my legacy to be, and that's what I want to be known for Carolina, is that, you have somewhere, and you're always going to be able to find yourself, and you're always going to be able to broaden your own horizons, because this is your home, and this is where you're meant to be.
Is there anything else that you think we didn't ask you about, or that you just wanted to be sure that you said before we wrap things up?
There's one thing I was actually thinking about when I was mentioning graduate students, and this is under sexual self-awareness. So I want to make sure the graduate students engaging in research are protected. A lot of them engage in research with principal investigators, but they aren't protected under those. They don't feel secure, and those relationships can become problematic. And I think it's really important to address that and provide an outlet for students to feel comfortable in reporting. A lot of times they don't report just because they feel the ramifications may be too tough, and they may be losing any progress they made in the research, and so they don't come forward. And that's problematic in itself, and that's toxic, and students need to be able to feel empowered and safe and secure in their academic environment too.